A worn-out face, exhausted and wrapped in an old blanket on a cold sidewalk, has become a very common sight. In dark alleys, under concrete bridges, and in public parks that were once filled with the laughter of children, the heavy breathing of neglected people can now be heard. Ironically, this is happening in America, a country that has sent humans to the moon, has Silicon Valley and Wall Street with the most advanced economy, and has inspired the world with speeches on freedom and human rights. The face of the United States today is no longer the same as it was 2 or 3 decades ago. Homelessness in America is no longer a new story. From the dark alleys of New York City to the shelters in San Francisco, homelessness has become a cracked mirror of American contradictions. This country is recorded as one of the countries with the highest homeless population in the world among developed countries. In 2024, the number of homeless people in the United States reached a record high in the history of official records. According to data collected at the end of January 2024, approximately 771,480 people experienced homelessness across the country. This number is equivalent to about 23 out of every 10,000 Americans not having a decent place to live that night. This bleak achievement marks an 18% increase compared to similar data collection in the previous year. In fact, according to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, this number is the highest since national homelessness data collection began in 2007. Indeed, the phenomenon of homelessness is not just an American problem. It is a global issue that haunts many countries. The United Nations estimates that there are around 100 to 150 million people worldwide who do not have a home and live as homeless. Even if the definition of homelessness is expanded to include people living in extremely unsuitable housing, the number jumps to 1.6 billion people. In absolute terms, the number of homeless people in the United States, which reached around 771,000 people in 2024 and 653,000 in 2023, is relatively small compared to large countries facing extreme poverty or conflict. For example, Pakistan is estimated to have around 8 million homeless people, followed by Nigeria and the Philippines with around 4.5 million each. Then, countries like Bangladesh and Syria are also reported to have homeless populations numbering in the millions. This data, compiled from various years, reflects the conditions in developing countries plagued by structural poverty, large populations, or prolonged conflict. Compared to them, the number of homeless people in the United States, which is only in the hundreds of thousands, is clearly much smaller. In fact, according to the World Population Review compilation, the United States is around 50th globally in terms of absolute homeless numbers. Several developing and war-torn countries dominate the top rankings. In India, based on 2011 data, it is reported to have 1.7 million homeless people, and this number is expected to continue growing over time. Then, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Somalia, and Zimbabwe each also report more than 1 million homeless citizens. This means that compared to these giants, the condition of the United States is indeed not the worst in quantitative terms. However, a different story emerges when looking at the proportion of homelessness to the population per capita. In large population countries, the numbers of millions of homeless people might be just a small fraction of the population. While in small countries or conflict zones, the percentage can be very striking. Meanwhile, the United States, with 23 homeless people per 10,000 residents, is equivalent to 0.23% of its population. At first glance, this rate is much lower than conflict countries like Syria or poor countries like Somalia. However, among developed or high-income countries, the percentage in the United States is considered high and very concerning. For comparison, Japan, a developed country with a dense population, has successfully reduced homelessness to around 0.2% per 10,000, with fewer than 3,000 homeless people across Japan. Japan has a very effective social network and housing policy in preventing mass homelessness. Singapore also reports a very low number, around 1.9-10,000. Even in Europe, although homelessness has increased over the past decade, the per capita rate is generally still comparable to or lower than that in the United States. Germany, for example, had around 262,000 homeless people out of a population of 83 million in 2022, which translates to about 3.110,000, far below the rate in the United States. France reported around 333,000 homeless people out of 67 million residents, or about 5/10,000, which is also lower than the rate in the United States. The United States' neighbor, Canada, is estimated to have around 235,000 homeless people. However, this number is likely an annual accumulation, meaning the number on a specific night could be much smaller. What's striking, though, is that among developed countries, the United States leads in the absolute number of homeless people. About 30% of the total homeless population in OECD countries, or the group of advanced economies, is in the United States. This is particularly notable given that the United States accounts for around 4% of the world's population but bears around 0.5% of the world's homeless population, meaning about 1 in 200 homeless people globally is an American. In short, in a global perspective, the United States occupies a paradoxical position. It's not the country with the highest number of homeless people in absolute terms, but it's among the highest among wealthy nations. Many poorer countries indeed have more homeless people. However, the expectation for the United States as a high-income country makes the hundreds of thousands of homeless people a striking figure. Homelessness in the United States reflects the sharp social inequality in the midst of prosperity. Homelessness in the United States has an uneven geographical pattern. Some areas face a much more acute homelessness crisis than others. California and New York, for example, are the epicenters of homelessness in the United States. These two states consistently account for the largest share of the national homeless population. Data from 2024 shows California has around 187,084 homeless people, while New York has around 158,019. Combined, these two states alone account for nearly 45% of the entire homeless population in the United States. Los Angeles, often referred to as the City of Angels, is frequently called the capital of homelessness in the United States. Los Angeles County, which includes the city of LA and its surroundings, recorded over 75,000 homeless people in 2023. This number jumped by around 9% from the previous year. Although the latest report from early 2024 shows that the increase has slowed down and the population has remained relatively stagnant at around 75,000 people, it's still a staggering number of people without homes in one county. Los Angeles is known for having a high number of unsheltered homeless individuals, with around 69.5% or 52,000 people sleeping in tents. The sight of tents and tarps on sidewalks, city parks, and under overpasses has become a common scene in LA. San Francisco, also in California, has been in the spotlight due to its visible homelessness crisis on its streets. The city, with a population of around 874,000, had approximately 8,300 homeless people in 2024, a 7% increase from 2022. However, it's not just the number that's concerning, but also the concentration of homeless individuals in the city's central area and the stark contrast to the wealth of the tech industry in Silicon Valley. The sight of tents in the Tenderloin or Soma districts, as well as people struggling with mental health issues or substance abuse on the streets, often makes national headlines. The homelessness rate in San Francisco is around 95 per 10,000 residents, one of the highest in the US for major cities. Seattle and its surrounding areas are also a hotspot for homelessness, particularly on the northern west coast. King County in Seattle counted around 16,000 homeless people on a single night in early 2024. Seattle, a wealthy city with a thriving tech sector that's home to Amazon and Microsoft, has seen an increase in homelessness as the cost of living skyrockets. As a result, it's estimated that half of the state's homeless population resides in Seattle or King County. New York, on the other hand, presents a different face of homelessness. In absolute terms, New York is often cited as having the largest homeless population of any city in the U.S., with numbers ranging from 70,000 to 80,000 people. However, the majority of these individuals are in official shelters. New York City has a right to shelter policy that guarantees anyone without a home the right to shelter. As a result, tens of thousands of people, including many families with children, sleep in hundreds of city-run shelters on any given night, and are thus relatively sheltered. However, this system is often overutilized, with thousands of families staying in shelters for months or even years because they are unable to secure permanent housing. In addition to these cities, other major cities in the U.S. also have significant homeless populations. San Diego, California has over 10,000 homeless individuals in its county. Phoenix, Arizona has seen a recent increase in homelessness due to population growth and rising rents. Philadelphia also has thousands of homeless people. Washington, D.C. reported around 6,800 homeless individuals in 2022, and Boston is struggling to provide housing for thousands of people without homes in the cold climate. Las Vegas, Nevada has a significant number of homeless people living in drainage tunnels beneath the city. The state of Hawaii is also experiencing a severe homelessness crisis. In 2019, Hawaii's homelessness rate was already high at 44 per 10,000 residents, and by 2024, it had jumped to nearly 80 per 10,000, making it one of the highest rates in the U.S. Many of them are locals or migrants from the mainland who hope to make a living. Unfortunately, they are hit hard by the very high cost of living. The problem is that if homelessness used to be synonymous with slums in city centers, this phenomenon is now spreading to suburban areas and even rural areas. Small and medium-sized cities in the United States are starting to feel the impact of the housing crisis that fuels local homelessness. Rent and housing price increases are not limited to megacities. Cities like Austin, Texas, Denver, Colorado, Nashville, Tennessee, Portland, Oregon, and others are all reporting increases in homelessness in recent years, coinciding with population migration and rising living costs. For example, Portland, a city with a population of around 650,000, is estimated to have over 5,000 homeless people with large tent encampments in many parts of the city. Denver saw a 12% increase in homelessness from 2020 to 2022, reaching around 6,800 people. Austin, meanwhile, has faced controversy over its anti-camping policies, which were repealed and then reinstated. Hundreds of people still live under bridges and in city parks. It's not just metropolitan areas that are affected. Small towns are also vulnerable to this issue. Even rural areas in America are experiencing a rise in homelessness, although it often goes unnoticed. Homelessness in rural areas or small towns doesn't typically manifest as rows of people on sidewalks but rather as hidden homelessness. These individuals live in broken-down cars on vacant lots or inhabit trailers without electricity on the outskirts of town. From the distribution patterns described, it's clear that homelessness is a national issue in the United States, not just a problem in specific cities. The issue is caused by complex factors, but some of the dominant causes are economic and a lack of affordable housing. The United States currently faces a significant deficit in affordable housing. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, there is a shortage of around 7.1 million affordable housing units available to extremely low-income households nationwide. This means that for every 100 low-income households, there are only 35 rental units available at a price they can afford. The rest must compete, double up, or pay more than they can afford. Typically, skyrocketing housing costs occur in areas where jobs are growing, but housing development is limited. Cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C. have long been known for being expensive. However, mid-sized cities like Austin, Denver, and Boise are now experiencing double-digit annual rent increases. Meanwhile, the federal minimum wage has been stagnant at $7.25 per hour since 2009. In other words, working doesn't guarantee the ability to pay rent. Many homeless individuals actually have jobs or sources of income, but their earnings are insufficient for housing in the local market. Concrete evidence of the economic correlation with homelessness can be seen in California and New York. Both regions have the highest housing costs and the highest rates of homelessness. In 2023, the three locations with the highest median rent in the United States were California, Washington, D.C., and Hawaii. Conversely, Mississippi, which has one of the lowest housing costs, saw a decrease in homelessness. This suggests that in areas with affordable housing, the pressure of homelessness can be alleviated, while in expensive areas, more people fall into homelessness. In addition to rent, housing prices are becoming increasingly unaffordable. Many low or middle-income families that might have been able to buy a home in the past are now forced to rent for life due to soaring prices. As a result, pressure in the rental market increases as more people compete for available units, driving rents even higher. In short, the homelessness crisis cannot be separated from the housing crisis. When housing becomes a luxury for some citizens, many people will be pushed onto the streets. Poverty, inequality, income, and a lack of affordable housing are the underlying factors that make thousands of people vulnerable to homelessness at any moment. And in an economic climate that is increasingly challenging for the lower class, homelessness becomes an extreme symptom that is visible to the naked eye.